Word, guys, it looks like we are live and ready to go for our Showdown live stream for Friday at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Here in this live stream, we're going to get you guys prepared for the single round slate, whether it's the weather, how the conditions looked in round one, or of course the player pool and ownership. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop right on into it. First off, with a little bit of a weather review for the slate. So going to go ahead and do a little bit of changes here with some of the setup. Here we go. Got that on there. And you'll see that the weather for tomorrow, a little bit more benign than what we had for today. Obviously, in the morning, we had 10 to 15 miles an hour winds, a little bit higher than what they actually had on the forecast. A lot of that comes down to location. They're on a vast desert and an open golf course, right? A lot of these other weather readings are coming from urban areas where there's a lot more buildings, that type of thing. So sometimes you're getting a little bit lower numbers. With that being said, though, 3 to 4 miles an hour wind for pretty much the entire day. The whole way up until the evening where it gets up to 6 miles an hour. But a majority of the players will be done by that time. So overall, we're expecting very similar conditions to what we saw in the afternoon. And if we go ahead and hop over to data golf, just to get an idea of how the course was playing, you'll see that in the morning and the afternoon actually played a little bit different. If we split it by wave, you'll see the morning wave played to a third of a stroke over par, whereas the afternoon played nearly a stroke under par. So that stroke under par average is what I'm going to be using for tomorrow, because in the afternoon, we had that 4 to 5 miles an hour type of conditions. The winds really didn't kick up. You saw it play, again, firm and fast, like what we saw in the morning. But the extra variable out of play made it play about a shot. Well, let's say 1.3 shots easier, right? Something right around that. So overall, with that being said, in terms of our modeling, isn't really going to change all that much. Overall, we were looking at guys that were great with the ball striking, relatively good off the tee, right? We want to make sure that they're keeping it in play more often than not. But distance, a huge factor here. That has not changed at all. The only factor that is slightly more important now than it was maybe going into the week is around the green play. It's a little bit more important than birdie or better percentage. I've slightly scaled back birdie or better in favor of around the green, just because conditions are a little bit more difficult. It's definitely a lot more firm and fast what we've seen in years past. So over the weekend, this golf course is just going to get more and more difficult. So that is something to look forward to here. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into a player poll. And I see some of you guys down there in the live chat. So how's it going first and foremost? Hopefully you guys had a good Thursday. Colin James says, Brooksies, yeah, I'm surprised. The guy's in second place. He had been losing strokes across the board in terms of his shots gained and went out there. And I'm a Brooks fan. I'm somebody who loves rooting for the guy again. He lives literally right down the road. He's from over there in Palm Beach. So glad to see him playing well. I'm not sure that continues throughout the weekend just because a lot of the form that we've seen of late, but really happy for the guy. I hope he continues it. Just from a at least personal rooting standpoint. Let's go ahead and talk the player pool though. So we're dealing with 130 players. We're not going to touch on every player in my player pool for today, but we're going to touch on the guys I think that are the most important. First and foremost, Jon Rahm, right? He's the man of the hour. He's somebody who went out there, he shot 4 under today, ended up birdieing the last hole, which I'm sure felt really good for him. But at one point in the round, he had hit every single green in regulation, and I believe all but one fairway. By the end of the day, he ended up missing a few more in each category, but overall, he had one of the best rounds in the field from tee to green. Whether it was the around the green play, getting up and down, his driver, which is, of course, always prolific for him, he had everything working. The issue was the putter. He could not buy a putt. In fact, he made some mistakes on the greens where he actually threw shots away, where he really had like 4 or 5 footers that he should have been making for birdie and just flat out missed them. That's not something that we see from Jon Rahm all that often. So the fact that he's still just lurking there at 4 under par is huge. If he goes out there, he makes his normal allotment of putts, which is more than the tour average. He's going to go out there and light this place up, 7, 8 under par. He talked in the after his interview after the round a little bit more about how it was important for him to get out there, win this golf tournament. He's from the area. I'm not sure if you guys know that he lives in this area when it's the off season. There's a lot of things going for him there. So I like him now, particularly in Friday and Saturday, because he's not going to have any of that pressure on him. I think on Sunday, when he's thinking about winning that golf tournament, winning in his hometown, that kind of thing, it may a little bit weigh on him, right? It happens from time to time. We hear that from players. But Thursday and Saturday, go ahead and fire him up. Sorry, Friday, Saturday. Next guy we want to talk about, let's talk about Justin Thomas, and then we'll talk about Patrick Cantley as well. JT, he looks pretty good today. The guy could not hit a fairway for his life, yet still got to 5 under par. That really speaks volumes about the ball striking, at least from the irons department. He also made his fair share of putts, which is something that's been a trend for JT over his last month or two, particularly in that fall swing. He really started to gain with the putter, which we hadn't seen for quite some time. And he's continuing that, which shows that it's not just an aberration. This is more than an established trend at this point. So really looking forward to Justin Thomas. He's $10,500. It's fairly priced. He's actually one of the lower owned options of the stud tier, 4% less than a Jon Rahm, a little bit less than a Patrick Cantley, right on line with the Hideki Matsuyama. And in my opinion, brings a lot more upside. He's one of the few players out there that is not afraid to go out there and shoot 7 or 8 under par. He can blow up at times, but nobody can question his upside. In fact, right now, he's the leader on tour in birdie or better percentage. He's averaging, before the round, it was 37.9%. It's a little bit lower than that because he only had 5 birdies today, I believe. May have been 4. I have to double check on that. But either way, slightly lower than that now. Moving on to Patrick Cantley, the guy could not keep the ball in play today. The fact that he shot the score he did, much like a Jon Rahm, pretty miraculous. I mean, the guy was missing fairways. He wasn't all too sharp with his irons. And that's something that was a concern for us going into the week. We talked about how Cantley, particularly on the weekend, his last 2 starts, had fallen apart with the iron play. And today it didn't look all too much better. So that's why he's on my player pool. That's why I really wanted to talk about him. As much as I'm okay with Patty Ice, he's not my favorite player on tour. I wish he was a little bit more excitable. He used to be just an absolute drag, right? He's getting a little bit better in that department. But nice to see him at least in contention, not having his best game, which really speaks volumes to his caliber of player, right? If he's going out there and he's struggling, like from the eye test, he looked like complete shit today, and still can put up a score like that. That speaks volumes to the type of player that he is, the kind of pedigree player that he is. So long-term, everything pointing up for Patrick Cantley. Short-term, maybe not so much. Hideki Matsuyama, I just don't like his putting. Anytime you have a guy that's not a good putter like him, it's hard for him to put up a ceiling round. He was really shaky today too, had a ton of bogeys, ton of birdies, which is great for single round scoring. If you played Hideki Matsuyama today, probably ended up being a pretty positive play for you. But that's not necessarily repeatable going forward, right? It's like hitting the slot machine and assuming that we're going to hit that the second time in a row. Statistically, not likely to happen again. Victor Hovland, I see someone down in the chat also fell victim to the whole Victor Hovland debacle. Yeah, me too, man. I have him in a lot of my 4-round stuff. I didn't play Showdown for today. I typically don't play Showdown on Thursdays. I just don't I don't really have a need for it, right? Friday through Sunday, I want to make some golf lineups, right? So that's why I play a lot of Showdown. There's quite a few edges to be had. Yeah, I had too much Hovland as well, and I'm not going to have him tomorrow in Showdown. He looked really off today with the iron play. I believe through his first 9 holes, he only hit 3 greens in regulation, which isn't good, right? He was hardly missing. He's hitting a lot of fringes. He was hitting a lot of the areas right around the greens, which kept his score at least relatively there. But anyone else in the field, right, if they were missing all those greens, they probably would have shot 3 or 4 over par today. He kept himself together with the around the green play. In fact, his chipping was one of his strong suits today, and he made a ton of putts. I mean, the guy was making 7-8 footers down the stretch just for par to keep his round together. So I hope he can go out and make a cut. He's in my main single entry lineup. I have plenty of lineups in the GPP without him. I had him in 30% of my GPP lineups, which isn't all that bad. I have a ton of good lineups this week, actually. I, at one point, was in 1st through 5th in the same GPP. So I was winning like $30,000. That was pretty nice, but not right now, right? So Victor Hovland, hopefully he can go ahead and make the cut for my single entry lineup. But I don't see him having a ceiling day. I mean, the guy was clearly off with his game. I mean, he's won 3 of his last 5 events. Who would have thought that would have been the case? I think that was the least of my worries going into this event, how Victor Hovland was going to be hitting the ball with his irons. That seems to be a problem. And anytime you have iron play, it tends to be the most consistent stat from round to round, which makes that something to look out for. Jordan Spieth looked pretty good. In fact, he only shot, I forget what he actually ended up getting to. May have been 2 under par, something like that. His iron play looks great. In fact, at one point, he was 13 of 14 with his greens in regulation. I was sweating a prop over there on Prize Picks for the greens in regulation. So his irons looked great, just like they did at Pebble Beach. The off the tee play was pretty decent. He was missing quite a few more fairways in this round than he did at Pebble Beach. That's why the scoring wasn't quite there. But at the same time, if he can figure out that putter, which wasn't there today, he would have shot like 6, 7 under par. He would have been the first round leader if he had that typical Jordan Spieth type of putter. So I don't have him in the player pool right now. We'll have to see on it. The price tag is definitely there. There's a few guys that like a little bit more, but if I was going to add anyone to my pool that I have down as a blank, it would certainly be Jordan Spieth. So we'll have to see on that. As of right now, obviously JT and Rahm are clear number 1 and 2 plays on the slate, in my opinion. And Xander Schofley looked amazing today. The guy looked back to what he was in early 2020. He was out there gating prolifically off the tee. In fact, he hit the most fairways, I believe, of anyone in the field. He's also somebody who was really good with the approach play. At one point, he was 12 of 13 with greens regulation, had a similar prop on him with that. He ended up hitting the over there, and he got to 4 under par. He had a bogey on the card too, so he had 5 birdies or better, which was one of the best numbers for the field as well. Fair price tag. The ownership has definitely gone up. He was right around 17% in your 4-round contest. Because of the round that he had, we can expect that to be a little bit higher for Showdown tomorrow. But he's one of the few pieces of chalk. Outside those 2 guys up top, those are always going to be chalky that I'm willing to get to. You can see a lot of the other chalk in this range, like a Brooks Koepka, who we'll touch on here in a second. Victor Hovland, and maybe even a Jordan Spieth, right? That's part of the reason why he's not a priority for me right now. He's 14%. That's significant right there. Down here, Daniel Berger, right? Still 11%. The issue with him is injury. We're going to talk about Daniel Berger as well, but he's injured, and you clearly saw that today. So you probably don't want to be investing in him. But let's go ahead and touch on Brooks Koepka, who I was wrong on. Go ahead and just say that, right? Guy went out there and was absolute fire. He's $9,000. He went down in price for whatever reason. People love themselves some Brooks Koepka. So this 18.7% number right here in terms of his ownership, I expect that to be low. He's probably going to be 25, maybe even 30% owned for Showdown tomorrow. And frankly, if you're relying on that 1-round sample size to say that he's just completely snapped back into form, so be it. Go have at it if you'd like to. But in my opinion, and from what we've seen on a large sample size, it's probably not the case. People are willing to have spike rounds from time to time, but chaining those together, a lot less likely, particularly if you're not coming in with good form, right? You're looking for people that are coming in with that form so they can ride that form, not necessarily just a 1-round sample size. So I'm going to be off of him. He's going to be super chalky, probably even chalkier than I have him there. Sam Burns looked really good today. The ball striking for Sam Burns is never an issue. Wasn't an issue when he missed the cut at the Amex. That was just actually Farmers is what I meant to say. That was just pure putting. Guy couldn't buy a putt for his life. Today, he made a few 30-footers. He was really hitting his around the green shots. His chips were excellent as well, which is typically an issue for Sam Burns. But like we outlined during the Sleeper Picks video, he was somebody that we obviously played. The around the green play has been a lot better of late. Let's go ahead and go down the chat, see if we're running behind or falling behind on chat. Barry Barr says, Ron going low tomorrow? I think so as well, man. The ball striking today was unbelievable. Scotty going to be hottie tomorrow. He's certainly going to be chalk tomorrow, but you can see I'm on him, right? I ended up playing him in my 4-round contest. I know yesterday I mentioned like, oh, am I going to end up having to fade Scotty Scheffler? I couldn't do it. He was super chalk. I believe he was the chalkiest guy on the slate. He's too good. And Spieth -1 today, gave a lot of holes away. So he played so much better than that. So much like a Jon Rahm, it's like the score doesn't tell the story, right? When they're hitting all those greens in regulation, they're putting themselves in good scoring positions. It doesn't tell the whole story. Now, if that was Kyle Stanley or that was Keegan Bradley and they're hitting all those greens in regulation, then who cares, right? They never cash in on them anyways. But when they're good putters like Jordan Spieth, Jon Rahm, that type of thing, I certainly like looking at that. Or even Sam Burns, right? When he missed the cut at the Farmers, it was because of the putter. He's typically one of the best putters on tour, so we could definitely expect him to bounce back. And in Showdown, those are the exact type of players I try to target. Daniel Berger, like I said, he's injured. You don't want to play him. He looked it today. He wasn't driving the ball very far. His irons were completely off. And if we take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, anything less than stellar for Daniel Berger's off, right? He's gaining nearly a stroke per round with the approach play. It's by far the most in the world, not even close. He's nearly exactly 0.1 shots gained better per round than Jon Rahm. Clearly the best player in the world, right? So Daniel Berger, don't want to play him. Today he lost strokes on approach. That is a huge red flag on top of 5 or 6 other red flags that we already had for him. Scotty Scheffler's chalk worth eating, much like a few of the other guys that we're eating in terms of chalk. The 2 guys up top going to Xander Schofley. Immaculate course fits. They looked really good in round 1. I can't see a reason to fade them other than the ownership. So if you want to blindly fade one of them due to game theory, that type of thing, go ahead, right? But you're going to have a hard time deciding. Let's just say that. Tony Finau looked atrocious today. He ended up at 3 over par, I believe. It was the off the tee play. He just put himself in a ton of trouble. And that's something that can happen at this golf course. You'll have people like a Justin Thomas today that were super inaccurate off the tee, never hitting any fairways. I believe he had less than 5 fairways for the day and never get into any trouble, right? He got away with it the entire day. Whereas Tony Finau, I would imagine he probably hit more fairways than Justin Thomas. We'd have to double check that. Yet he got completely burned by the trouble, right? So there's a little bit of luck to it. So I don't want to dismiss the fact that Tony Finau could come back around because he's typically a much better driver of the golf ball than he was today. But he certainly got a little bit unlucky. Louis Oosthuizen, I know a few people were concerned about the fact that he hadn't played for quite some time. Hopefully he shed that concern for you guys. He looked amazing today. The Louis Oosthuizen that we're used to. Adam Scott, the same thing. He looked really good during the full swing with his approach play. Somebody who really got back to gaining about half a stroke per round. And today did that same exact game. Was super good with the distance control with those irons. It was $8,000, so we actually got a little bit of a price decrease. A lot of and by the way, the pricing algorithm for Friday, I've kind of started to figure this out. It's pretty much ownership based. So they released the pricing about an hour after the start of the event. And the only information they have at that point is like the guys that get off to a really, really early lead. Or of course, the guys that are just super highly owned. And the way that I see that they do their pricing is they just take the guys that were chalk and they slightly price them up. And the guys that were super low owned, they slightly lower their price. And if there's somebody that got out to like a 4-stroke lead or something like that, like through the first 3 holes, that type of thing, they'll price them up as well. And you can see that's the case with Adam Scott because he didn't tee off until later in the day and he got a price decrease. You can see some of these other people like Louis that started really early in the day. And in fact, he started off pretty well, got a price increase. A couple other examples on the board here. Brooks started off a little bit shaky, ended up bogeying, I believe, his second hole. So he came in lower owned than he should have been. And a lot of that was the ownership as well. Like I said, he was one of the lowest owned guys on the slate, at least of the guys up top. So I'm starting to figure out their pricing algorithm here, starting to be able to predict it a little bit better. And taking advantage of some of these situations where a guy got a price decrease for no reason at all is something you want to take advantage of, right? Certainly, it does funnel a little bit more ownership to him. You can say have him at nearly 12%, whereas for 4-round stuff, he was in the single-digit range. But given that we saw him play so well in round 1, I'm going to be back all over him. Down here in the chat, we got Dropping Birdie saying at the end, any guys that played like shitbags today, you go to tomorrow? Exactly. Literally, that's the key to Showdown because there's a whole psychology factor that people are not wanting to playing the guys that played horrible. So Victor Hovland would be like the number 1 guy for that list. He was chalk. He went out there, completely screwed guys over in round 1. I don't think anyone out there is going to be surprised if he went out there and shot 7 under tomorrow. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world. So completely true. Billy Ho tomorrow. I didn't see any of his stats because he wasn't in my player pool. I wasn't like actively checking his shots gained stuff. So I'll have to check after I get off of here. But in terms of a course fit, his approach play is there. He's a decent putter. He can certainly spike, get to 6-7 under par. I'm not against it at all. Not at all. Let's move on a little bit further. Corey Connors is certainly somebody that burned people today. He was 4 over at one point, but ended up finishing at 1 over or even. It's one of those 2 numbers. I'm not sure whether he birdied the last or not, but $8,200, that is more than fair. He's an immaculate ball striker. That is exactly what we're looking for at this venue. Abraham Answer also looked really solid today. The approach play was there. The putter was there as well. Billy Horschel, you can see I have him in my player pool without even knowing the stats. It's just somebody who's going to go out there and pop from time to time. Taylor Gooch looked pretty decent today. He was -1 when we ended up getting here on the stream. No idea where he ended up finishing on those last few holes, but the ball striking is always there. He's a top 20 model fit for me this week and probably not going to be chalky either. I'm at 10% right now. Obviously, if he went out there and finished it like birdie or something like that and is 4 under par, probably going to be a little bit higher owned than what we had him at there, but we'll have to see. Max Homa makes a lot of sense at $7,800. He looked really solid today. Didn't do anything special in terms of his score, but the ball striking was what we're looking for. Keith Mitchell went out there and continued the really solid recent run of form. He's worth a few looks at. Siwoo Kim, he's in contention. He's at least within the cut line. And for Siwoo Kim, that is a huge deal. If the guy is over the par, outside the cut line, that type of thing, you never want to play him in Showdown. But if the guy is even remotely in contention, he could throw that 7-8 under round out there at any point. So one of my favorite plays to use in Showdown. He's probably the most volatile player on tour. You can see he's actually somebody I project a significant amount lower than a lot of his peers. But I like him more than a Joel Damon because his top end upside, his ceiling is much higher than somebody like a Joel Damon. So that's why we're targeting him for Showdown and for 4-round stuff. I mean, he's somebody who's going to cash you outrights even. I mean, just from a fantasy or a betting perspective, if you're putting dollars behind players, you want to be targeting people like a Siwoo Kim. That's the type of profile that you're looking for. Matt Kutcher here at $7,500. He's an immaculate course fit. The course history, I should say, not immaculate course fit. The course history is insane. So that's where we're playing him. He looked pretty solid today. Again, didn't do anything special, but wasn't throwing himself into the fire. Wasn't missing greens left and right. Wasn't throwing away, hemorrhaging fairways, that type of thing. Gary Woodland, he was in the lead at one point early in the day. He's relatively low owned, so the price didn't really go up. So we still get a relatively good price tag there at $7,200. I'll definitely be going back to that. The ball striking was there. Russell Knox, same story. Over the last 24 measured rounds, Russell Knox has been an absolute machine. And just to show you what I'm talking about, gaining 0.6 shots gained approach per round. He continued that today, and I'm going to continue to ride that. Is the most consistent stat from round to round. Cam Davis could not hit a fairway for his life. He's much better at resort-style golf courses where he doesn't have to worry about cactuses, rocks, all that sort of fun stuff. So I'm going to be fading him until we get to that type of venue. Charles Howell III, just not the best course fit here. He's played this golf course God knows how many times, probably at least 15. So you can play him from a experience standpoint, but there's guys I like more. Danny McCarthy, more of a putting specialist, not really what I'm looking for. On the other hand, Keegan Bradley and Aaron Wise, more than willing to go back to them. I mean, Keegan Bradley, no duh, right? He shot 3 under par today, played pretty well. But Aaron Wise, even somebody who finished at 1 over par, much like Victor Hovland, some of these guys that burned people in round 1, he was chalky. He didn't come through, so nobody's going to play him tomorrow. So you can see how I'm there at just 9.5%. That is significantly lower than what he was in 4-round stuff. He was nearly 20% owned, 25% owned in some of these single entry contests. I'm going to be all over him for Showdown, much like Dropping Birdies said just a few minutes ago. Those are the exact type of guys that we're looking for. Brendan Grace at $7,100. I told you, the guy is never going to model well. He's never going to come in with good recent form. But if he's good at a golf course, has good course history, you always play Brendan Grace. It's just a thing. At the Open Championship, even though it's not really a course history, right? It's more event history, you play him. You play him at this event. He just tends to excel here. God knows what the reason is. I can't figure it out. If anyone has any theories, go ahead and try and let me know. But this is one of those events for him. Much like a Bubba Watson, you play him at Brendan Grace tracks, and this seems to be one of them. Kevin Streelman's an elite iron player, so that's why we're playing him in the player pool. Also tends to pop from time to time, gets that 7-8 under mark with a little bit more regularity. Francesco Molinari, he's that same type of guy, highly volatile. Same thing with a Carlos Ortiz, high birdie or better percentage. And we're starting to get into that range now, guys, where it's not really the course that we're looking for, but more guys that can get to that 7-8 under mark. I'm going to be playing 50 lineups for tomorrow for Showdown, which means I'm going to be scattershotting a lot of these 6K guys. So guys like Carlos Ortiz, I'm looking at 7 to 10% exposure, right? I'm probably getting him in 5 to 7 lineups, that type of thing. That way I have enough exposure where if he goes out there, gets that 7-8 under round, I'm going to be able to at least get enough of my permutations up top, combinations up top with the studs that I like, that I'm going to be able to hit something, maybe have a 5 type of core, that type of thing. That's what I'm doing with these, right? So Molinari, 7 to 8% type of guy. Matt Jones, a 5% guy. Mito Pereira, maybe a little bit more, maybe 15 to 20%, just because, he's a little bit more expensive. He's $7,500, but he's also somebody that my model loves. So I'm looking to get a little bit more exposure there. But a lot of these guys I have marked down as a yes, we're not going to go through every single one. It's that same type of circumstance, right? Like a Chris Kirk, a good approach player. Ches Reavie, who's won here. Lucas Herbert, who's a good ball striker. Laird, same type of story. I'm going to have 5 to 7% of all of these type of players. You can see in terms of their ownership, all right around 2%. The only real exception in this range is Adam Hadwin, who's 5 under par. He's in the top 3 right now of the golf tournament. And anytime that happens, those guys tend to get a lot of exposure. And the opposite of what Droppy Birdies was saying, right? When a guy goes out there and has a really solid round, it is extremely difficult to back it up. When they do something like Seamus Power did last week when he goes out there and shoots 16 under par. That was extremely mind-boggling, right? When Power got out to that huge lead, we were like, wow, that hasn't happened in a while. Yeah, that's because people don't back up good rounds all that often. So same story with Adam Hadwin here. I don't expect him to go out and repeat that type of performance. Moving down a little bit further, a few other chalky guys are going to be Charlie Hoffman. People are going to jump all over him because the price tag is much lower than it should be. He was coming in with his injury concerns, but completely brushed them off and had a really solid round today, which pisses me off. But he's still just as likely to withdraw tomorrow as he was going into the week. This is somebody who withdrew on Friday last week after shooting 3 under par at Spyglass Hill, by far the hardest of the 3 golf courses. So I just can't play him, knowing that in the back of my head, that he could wake up tomorrow, withdraw, screw me over. Because last week on Friday, he cost me over $500 on Showdown lineups. I had him in like 30 of my main lineups in the Showdown GPP, and he pulled that whole debacle. So we're not doing that again. No, thank you. Until we hear that he's 100% healthy, I will have 0% Charlie Hoffman. Miliano Grillo loves this golf course. Anytime he gets here, he absolutely tears it apart. He was in the lead at one point today, ended up really faltering down the stretch, finishing at 1 under par. But the ball striking was exactly what we're looking for, which is very encouraging. Garrick Higo, just a much better player than the price tag. Also highly volatile. Same thing with the Dylan Fratelli, just better than the price tag. Somebody who's not afraid to go out there and go low. Patrick Rogers, I like the ball striking. I like the fit here on the West Coast. He always really plays his best golf out here. Moving down a little bit further, Matt Wallace did not have a very good start to the day. He started with a double bogey, ended up being 4 over par at one point, but got in at even par. And I like that type of momentum, right? When somebody starts off real shaky, looks like they're going to go trunk slamming, really not care for the rest of the event, but brings it back to even par on day one. That's usually something that they're able to build on. So I like going to Matt Wallace for that reason. He's also going to be extremely low owned. Patton Kizzire is a good ball striker, an extremely streaky player. Somebody who's not afraid at all to take it to 8 under par. Sebastian Munoz, same exact type of build. And same thing with Adam Long. All 3 of these players, pretty much the same build. Adam Long, a little bit cheaper at $6,500 as opposed to $68. In terms of their course fit, you can see it's all relatively similar as well, right? Just middling numbers, nothing that's really popping off of the board. But what separates them is their birdie or better percentage. So if we go over here to the last 50 rounds, and granted, this is really early in the season, so a lot of these numbers aren't going to be as mature as they need to be. But I'm assuming if you check this out, yeah. So look, 19 for Sebastian Munoz, 55 for Patton Kizzire. Long doesn't have a big enough of a sample size, but historically, he's somebody who's going to be a top 50 player on tour with a birdie or better percentage. So that's what we're looking for with these shots down low. Like I said before, 5 to 7% exposure. For Munoz, probably looking closer to 10 to 15, just because I really like the play there. He's a little bit more of a consistent model fit across the board. Those are going to be the plays down low. Kyle Stanley, we're going right back to him. He had a rough day today, but the ball striking was there. He was just a dog shit putter as per usual, so no surprise there at all. Kramer Hickok, also somebody we're going back to. He's a really good ball striker. And lastly, this, I believe, actually, we might have a few more picks down there at like 6K. Seth Strzok, the last legitimate option on the board that we're going to. He's a really streaky player. So much like a Munoz, much like a Kizzire, fits the birdie or better percentage type of build. Now, if we go to the bottom of the board, you can see that first off, there's just a huge dead range. You know, this middle bottom of the 6K range, it's first off a lot of guys that aren't good course fits. I mean, just a lot of shorter hitters, Lahiri, Bryan, Duncan, Jaeger, Sloan, all guys that aren't very good off the tee, but also guys that didn't play very good today. So I don't really want many of these guys in this range. There's a reason why they're pretty much all fades. A couple exceptions. You could convince me to play a couple lineups with Duffner or Jimmy Walker. You could convince me to maybe play Austin Eckroat or Ryan Moore. But none of them really excite me. You know, same thing with Harry Higgs up here or JT Poston. Harry Higgs and Poston had really solid rounds in round one, but you can see they're also a little bit more chalky as a result, right? 5.5%, 7.4%, which for this lower of the 6K range, that is chalky as hell. That's 7 to 10 times more ownership than a lot of their peers. So make sure you keep that in mind. It's a little bit relative. All right, let's go down to the bottom of the board. A few guys I am considering as pure flyers. Brendan Hagey, a guy that is extremely volatile. He's gone out to a bunch of first-round leaders. He's very good. He's good with his distance. He's solid off the tee. His approach play, normally dog shit. But when he figures that out, goes out there, is able to gain 2-3 strokes in the field, he could go out there and put an 8-9 under round up there. So I like going to him. He's also a really solid putter. We go down here to Preston Summerhays. He's that kid who shot 8 under par during one of the practice rounds this week. I didn't play him for my 4-round stuff. I believe he went out there and didn't have a very good day today. And if that's the case, he's going to still be extremely low owned. And that's why I'm going to targeting him, right? If he's a volatile player, if he's somebody who's young, going to either really hit it out there, be firing in all cylinders, or probably tank, Showdown is the way to target him. And lastly, Sung Kang. He's the more mature version of a Preston Summerhays, right? He's not a young lad by any means, but he has the game of one of these amateurs, right? Somebody who goes out there is either going to shoot 5 or 6 over par or 5 or 6 under par, really nothing in between. That's Sung Kang's game, and he's only $6,200, which makes him slightly intriguing to me. And the last guy I might make in my player pool would be Ben Silverman. He's one of the Monday qualifiers, obviously playing a lot of good golf to even make it into this field. Just we'll have to see if I need him, right? There's a lot of other guys that we already have in the pool, like a Hagey, some of these other guys down low. Of course, the middle 6K range where there's quite a few guys that I like. But if I need to fit in a few more people, Silverman might make it. We might take a look at Sam Ryder. He's a good ball striker. Jason Duffner, like we already outlined before. Or maybe one of these two guys that's a little bit more chalky, right? I'd probably prefer JT Poston just because, I really like him. He's one of my favorite players on tour, but we'll have to see. With that being said, let's go ahead and make a few lineups. We'll go ahead and touch on the chat down below, and then we'll hop into a few lineups. Dropping Birdie says, did the one morning player and 5 afternoon players, as you suggested, cashing on 11, 12 lineups for Showdown? Yeah, that's what I did too. So my main lineup had Viktor Hovland and then 5 guys in the afternoon. Now, Viktor Hovland, of course, was the wrong choice in the morning. If I would have taken a Xander Schofley, any of the other guys like a Louis Oosthuizen that really killed it in the morning, I'd probably be winning even more money than I am. I mean, my GPPs ended up playing really well. But yeah, for my single entry, which is where a lot of my investment is this week, I picked the wrong guy. So I'm glad that ended up working out for you. I expect that to be at least a little bit advantageous. I mean, you guys saw the differences in the waves, right? It was about a 1.3 stroke difference. So stacking that afternoon wave today is certainly advantageous because tomorrow, if anything, the morning wave should be the advantageous wave because they have the softer greens. Similar conditions in terms of the wind. It could be an even bigger advantage come the end of the day. Barry says, cut line looking like -2, -1. Give me some of the 7K, 6K cheapies at +2 or better. They're going to have to shoot for that number, right? They're going to have to get to -2, -1. The one thing I will say is that some of those cheap players really, really care about making the cut. So some of them tend to get a little bit tense, right? When they get around that cut line, they're going to shoot 4 or 5 under par, but they might not try to extend that to 6 or 7 under par. So be a little bit careful with only targeting guys in that range, but mixing in 1 or 2, I certainly don't mind. And you also said, don't sleep on Ryan Moore. Hey, we'll see, man. I just don't think it's the greatest course fit. And I know you touted him round 1, so I know he's your boy. So go ahead and play him. I might have him in a few lineups. But yeah, and he said, how's the lineup look at me? I'll show you guys. We'll show you guys when we get over there. All right, let me go ahead and bring up Draftkings, and we'll go ahead and make a few lineups, like I said. I need to stop sharing that. There we go. And in general with the lineups, because I know we're going to cover that there at the end. At one point today, I was in 1st through 5th place of one of the GPPs. So it said I was winning just some absurd amount of money. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, but we're still well in the positive, which is good. I definitely need Brooks to fall down the board, and I need Theegala to fall down the board. I'd say those would be my main 2 pieces, just because I didn't have either one. I mean, Brooks, obviously, I don't think anyone expected what happened today. And Theegala, I didn't expect him to be this good. I mean, he's somebody who we knew he was pretty good. We saw him in college, right? But most of the time when these kids come out of college, even the best of them, right, they don't come out and make like 6 straight cuts in a row. They don't come out here and compete in like 4 or 5 straight golf tournaments. They'll do it from time to time, but they're not going to do it consistently. If Theegala, and now it's only 1 round, right? He can completely throw it away and miss the cut tomorrow. If he has a really solid performance this week, the kid's legit. I mean, you got to start talking about him as an up-and-coming star if he does it again this week, because for him to have done it at the Farmers, frankly, even some of those fall tier events, that's impressive shit, right? And to do it this consistently, that really matters. All right, strategy-wise, though, let's go ahead and hop into this. Usually the best way to do this, as usual, right, is to go ahead and make a few lineups. So we're going to go ahead and start up with a GPP lineup. So for a lot of our 4-round stuff, we were looking at trying to fit in 2 studs up top, really take more of a studs and duds approach. And that's what I think a lot of the field is going to try and do tomorrow. right? I think a lot of people saw John Rahm's round today, going to want to try and get a lot of exposure there. I think a lot of people are also going to try and take Scotty Scheffler. He was the hot commodity going into the week, ended up paying it off today. Would not be surprised at all. So I'm going to try and avoid actually matching Rahm and Scheffler together, the two, at least in my opinion, what should be the chalkiest options on the slate. I don't mind taking them independently, outside of taking them together. So if you're on Fantasy Cruncher, one of those type of optimizers where you can set rules, whatever, that type of thing, maybe make a rule just to not have Rahm and Scheffler together. I think that'd probably be a good idea for tomorrow. Terms of another things for GPPs, I think you could start your lineups in the 9K range. I don't think you have to take one of these two guys up top. That gives you a little bit more flexibility with the rest of your spots. And in fact, for this lineup, for the sake of this video, let's go ahead and do that. And let's go ahead and start with Scheffler, right? So the fact that we're not taking John Rahm means that we can take a Scotty Scheffler with at least a little bit more confidence. And let's go ahead and we could add in a Xander Schofley. We could go down to a Jordan Spieth. I wouldn't hate that, or Sam Burns. If we wanted to make this a unique lineup, taking Victor Hovland would almost immediately do so. In fact, having Scotty Scheffler in a lineup makes me a little bit more inclined to take somebody like a Victor Hovland, just because he's going to be 30-35% owned, right? We're looking at 7-8% projected ownership on somebody like a Victor Hovland, at least considering the round that he had, right? The algorithm I have has him a little bit higher than that. But given the psychology in play, it usually comes in a little bit lower than that, which is going to make him a good ownership pivot. So let's go ahead and experiment with this. Go ahead and start with those two. One high-owned stud, one low-owned stud. That puts us at $7,700 remaining per player. To be honest, this 8K range, I'm okay with skipping it. I don't think we have to force in one of them. So if we like one of these guys in the high 8K range or even the low 9K range, would not be opposed to go ahead and squeeze one in. So one that would come to mind, Louis looked really good day one. If we wanted another super low-owned pivot play, we could go to a Tony Finau, but he looked really off today. I'm not sure how much I would endorse that type of thing. Of course, Sam Burns, I talked about as one of my favorite plays on the slate. Even a Jordan Spieth, who really should have made a lot more putts today. Let's experiment with a Jordan Spieth. He's trying to take three of the guys here in the 9K range. It's certainly a little bit aggressive. You can see that puts us down to just $7,200 remaining per player, but I think we can make it work. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that would look like. So we have two low-owned guys up top. I don't think we need to try and go to the bottom of the board, right? I don't think we need to try and fit in, a Sam Ryder who I talked about before, or Brendan Hagey, just because I don't think we needed the salary, right? If we were taking a John Rahm as opposed to a Scotty Scheffler, that type of thing, we would certainly need that extra salary. Probably not in this type of build. So let's go ahead and take a look at the middle of the 6K range rather than the bottom. A few options that stick out to me. We talked about Straka. He's extremely volatile. Sebastian Munoz, same type of thing. Or even a Garrett Kigo or Fatelli. My favorite of the bunch there are going to be Munoz, just because he has that distance we're looking for. Also, he was number 19 on tour and birdie or better percentage, which was head and shoulders above even some of the other guys in that range. So that would put us at $7,500 remaining per player, which is plenty. I think that's more than enough salary to deal with here. So let's go ahead and go back into the 7K range. And I mentioned before, I really like Mito Pereira. He's pretty much an instant click for me at that price tag. He hit the ball excellent today. His off the tee play is going to pay him huge dividends here. He's hitting it 340, 350 yards off the tee at this golf course, which means he can cut off pretty much every single hole. So I like that a whole lot. That puts us at $7,400 remaining. Keegan Bradley, I wouldn't mind. It's not my favorite play on the slate, though. And actually be a little bit more inclined to go down to a Carlos Ortiz, a KH Lee, a Woodland. Yeah, so I think my favorite play would be an Ortiz here. Ortiz, extremely volatile. He's also sneaky long off the tee, which makes him a pretty sneaky course fit here at TPC Scottsdale. And he had a pretty decent round one. You can see he's in 32nd place. So you can see in general, it's guys that didn't really have a nuclear day one. Jordan Spieth 1 under, Munoz 1 under, Pereira 1 under, Ortiz 2 under, Hovland's 1 over. The only guy who really had a solid day was Scotty Scheffler, which means that first off, they have a lot of room to bounce back. And they're also not guys that were worried about them have to repeat that type of performance, right? That's something I try to avoid in Showdown. But the ownership perspective, right, the only real high-owned guy we have in this lineup is a Scotty Scheffler. So if you wanted to go ahead and take another chalky guy, right, let's go ahead and see what a lineup would look with John Rahm in it. So I know I prefaced it a little bit before. Let's say you really like Scotty Scheffler. You really like John Rahm for tomorrow. First off, couldn't blame you, right? Who doesn't like those two players? you're going to have to spend down from a Pereira, right? You're not going to be able to take a guy in the middle of that 7K range. This is when the guys down at the bottom of the board become useful, right? Going to somebody like a Brendan Hagey, going to somebody like a Preston Summerhays, who we said you might want to take a few shots on. Hagey, you could go to somebody down here at $7,100 like a Sam Ryder. That's when those guys become useful, right? I don't think you have to try and force them into lineups, but when you want to take a really aggressive stand up top on 3 of these guys above 9K, that's how you go ahead and do so. So that's what a build would look like there. I showed you guys the 3 options I would use down in that $6,000 range, but I wouldn't use them in more than a few lineups, right? They're not people that are relative, or I was going to say relatively consistent. They're not consistent at all. Let's go ahead and make a cash lineup now, though, which could not be the more opposite build. Rather than looking at a studs and duds approach where we're trying to take 3 of those guys up top even, we're looking at more of a balanced build, right? So trying to take one guy in each price range, that type of thing. The clear option at the top of the board is Jon Rahm. Can't convince me otherwise. The guy's extremely consistent. The ball striking was there in round 1. I see him shooting like at worst tomorrow, 5 under par. Moving down a little bit further, trying to take another guy in the top of the 9K range is a little bit too much in terms of opportunity cost. The most expensive I would probably go would be a Xander Schofley. Going down even a little bit further might make some sense. Let's go ahead and try the Xander Schofley route. If we're not able to afford him, we can easily pivot to a Louis Oosthuizen, or perhaps even a little bit further down the board, somebody like a Taylor Gooch or a Corey Connors. But we have $7,400 remaining per player, which might be doable. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it would look like. Abraham Answer played some excellent golf today. Same thing with Adam Scott. In terms of cash, because Adam Scott got a price decrease, he played such good golf today. He is also a really good course fit. I think he makes a whole lot of sense for this cash build. He's also going to be relatively popular because of his positioning on this pricing board. So he's somebody I would really look at in cash contests. A little bit further down the board, Keith Mitchell. He's got the great recent form, the great course fit. I would consider him. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that would look like. We're going to have to go a little bit further down the board because we only have $7,000 for our last 2 spots. Somebody towards the bottom of this range I really like. I mean, Brian Harman looked really good today. I didn't have him in my 4-round stuff, but I couldn't blame you there. But the safest option, and in cash, that's what we're looking for, is Russell Knox. I mean, the approach play has been absolutely outstanding for him. And again, that's the number 1 key stat for this week. So he makes a lot of sense at that price tag. And now we have $7,000 remaining. I don't think you have to spend all of your salary. If you wanted to, the clear option would be a Kevin Streelman at $6,900. Grillo, probably worth a few looks. Also a Matt Wallace. But for me, it is going to be Streelman, I'd say. He's the most consistent iron player of the bunch. It was really between Streelman and going with somebody like a Grillo. Grillo obviously has the course history going for him. But from the putting side, Kevin Streelman, a much more consistent putter. So he doesn't go out there and lose 3 to 4 strokes putting in a single round like a Grillo is fully capable of. A Grillo does not have it with the flat stick. It tends to be extremely ugly. So that's what we've got going for a cash lineup. We'll go ahead and touch on the chat before we go on and get out of here and get you guys ready for tomorrow. So let's go ahead down here. Any advantage on the front or back week for Showdown? Let's go ahead and take a look. I'll bring up data golf for you guys real quick. All right, I'm back. I had a glitch on my end with the streaming software. All right, we're back. Let me go ahead and share my screen here with Data Golf. Cool. So if we're looking for an advantage on the front or back 9, the main thing that we're really looking for here is a birdie streak, right? People that are going to be able to get 3 birdies in a row, that type of thing. So they're either starting on 1 or starting on 10. So the first 3 holes of the front 9, you can see it's 2 relatively easy holes, right? Hardly over par, hardly over par. In terms of birdie percentage, you're looking at a 9% on 2, a 14% on 1. That obviously would be catty cornered with 18, which is one of the more difficult holes on the golf course. So I'm not sure if that's what we'd really be looking for. But the issue is, if we take a look at the converse, right? So it's easy to start on 9, has a 21% birdie rate. That's pretty solid. 9% for hole 8. That's right about average for this golf course. And I guess 10, this would be the best stretch that you would have. It would be 8, 9, 10, but it's not anything crazy, right? It's 21, 17, and 9%. At some of these other golf courses where we have par 5s to end in 9, it's a lot more drastic than that. So it's nothing really of note, I would say, dropping birdies. But in general, I would want guys starting on the front nine, but it's not a huge advantage one way or the other. Let me go ahead and split it by wave just to see if it changes anything. Because again, we're really looking at the afternoon. Like I said before, the conditions in the afternoon much more consistent to what we're going to be having today, or not today, I guess tomorrow. Sorry. Let's see. It looks consistent. I mean, there's not a 3-hole stretch on this golf course where it was under par. It looks like this ending stretch here, 16 through 17, played a lot easier in the afternoon than it did in the morning. You see this hole played 0.1 strokes easier, 0.2 over here. Actually played a little bit harder at 15. Yeah, man, I don't think there's a significant advantage one way or the other. But again, like I said, if you want to look at guys on the front nine, go ahead. And you like the new graphics? I appreciate them, man. They're going to get better. I have somebody actually making professional ones right now. The ones that I have up here for right now, I put together in like 5 minutes. I did what I could on Photoshop. I'm far from a professional. But I appreciate that you enjoy them. I put some time into them. But that's all I've got for you guys here. I appreciate you guys stopping by, enjoying the live stream. We're going to be doing the same thing tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So look forward to that. That'll, of course, be for the Saturday Showdown after the cut. Good luck with all of your 4-round contests. You guys are probably going to have quite a few cut sweats tomorrow. I'm expecting a cut right around -1, maybe -2. I believe it's hardly -1 right now, so we'll have to see. If the conditions are as easy as they were in the afternoon, probably looking at -2, just saying. So we'll have to see with that. Go Victor Hovland. Hopefully he turns it around. Hopefully Russell Henley misses the cut. Hopefully Seamus Power does as well. And hopefully you guys have a good weekend.